Hello and welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at Bitcoin, some of the macro indicators, and trying to help answer the question, do we have a general idea of when alt season will happen? Now, I will pause you right there. And I think we need to answer that question or ask that question a little bit differently. And that is, what can we look for to tell when alt season has begun? So it's more important to have data and indicators that will show us when alt season starts to come back rather than trying to find a time because of prior cycles and the amount of time it took between certain points. It's better to have indicators and data to show us this is when alt season is going to happen. And so I'm going to get into that in this video. Let's start off with fear and greed. And as you can see right now, still high up into greed. Over the last year, you can see that overall greed to fear has been in a downtrend. Technically, that still is a lower high, but when we zoom in at the last 3 months, that is definitely a higher spike. So could it keep going higher and creating higher lows, higher highs from this point? We will see. But overall, the trend is still downwards. If we go to this chart or this picture that explains to us what to look for when we have alt season, I want to make this very clear. What we are looking for is Bitcoin to be pretty much near the top or in the process of topping. When that happens, there is a rotation from Bitcoin to the largest cap altcoins in the top 10, such as Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, Solana, BNB, a little bit of Doge maybe. And then when it's truly alt season, we see that final rotation into mid caps, small caps. And if you pick the right altcoins, you can see your gains triple, 5x, 10x in the span of a month. At least that is what's happened the last two cycles right around the top. So something to look out for. Our next chart, just something to keep in perspective, is that when we have these corrections, and recently we just saw something around a 10% correction. So this chart shows us a 15%, and then there is another 10%, is that in these uptrends, pullbacks are going to happen, and that is normal. When those pullbacks happen, those are times to possibly look for good deals and lower prices to dollar cost average in. So it sucks that it doesn't go straight up, but nothing does. If you believe in what you're buying and you're putting your hard-earned money into it, then you should like buying at lower prices. Going over to the alt season index on blockchaincenter.net, you can still see the overall uptrend has not been broken. Higher highs, higher lows. We are at a higher low right now. So possibly some good value areas or ranges to look for buying in for some of your favorite altcoins. Let's go over to the rainbow chart. Now, what we see here is a couple of factors. One, let's just take the rainbow chart for what this is giving us. For any of you new viewers, you might be looking at this and saying to yourself, well, Bitcoin's value is right in the middle. It's an average value. I would caution you on that because each halving, the value or the price of Bitcoin has gone up in a different color zone. And for each peak, it has gone down a color zone. And you can see that reflected with the prior rainbow chart from the peaks, how the peaks get lower. Now, that is diminished returns. And what that is caused by is something known as logarithmic. Log scale is factors of 10, which is what we have here. But this is known as logarithmic regression. The value regresses over time. Not to say you can't make great money, but instead of hoping for a 200x or a 20x, maybe you're now looking for something like a 5x. So the rainbow chart shows how the price stays within this logarithmic regression band. And with these tops getting lower, the next color bands down would be the orange bands. And if there is a top in March, then you would be looking for a price somewhere in that 120 to 100 54K region right there. You can see those orange boxes right there. Now, there's also been something that people talk about that's a 4-year cycle. How Bitcoin tops in November or December every 4 years or every post-halving year. So this was November, December 2013. This was December 2017, again, 4 years later. This top November of 21, again, 4 years later. So that would put us in November, give or take, of 2025. And if you look at those orange boxes, you can see that it is around 147 to 187K, give or take. There's a range in there. Now, last cycle, we did have that unique black swan event that we will not talk too much about. But what happened is there was all that QE, the money printing, and we had an early top, a double top. Alt season really happened right in here with the different data that I'm going to show you, whereas alt season happened right after the peak in 2017. And we're going to get more into that. Now on this channel, I talk about different altcoins. I also talk about Bitcoin mining stocks and looking for value across the crypto space. So subscribe if you want to hear more about that. So what do we have right now? We have Bitcoin still in an uptrend, still with green candles. Now they are Heikin-Ashi candles. This is on the weekly. And something I've been showing you is that when we take our fib retracement tool and we go from the last cycle high to low, you can see the low. I'm trying to match the line on right here. And we take our fib off log, what happens is that you see that the price is getting stuck right at the 1618. Let me scroll up here. The price is getting stuck right at the 1618, which is about 102K. My fib isn't perfect. It's actually a little bit under 102K. So the price keeps getting stuck there. Last week, something I talked about in the video is that with the Heikin-Ashi candles, we want to see more than just wicks above that 1618 line. When Bitcoin did make a new high in March of last year, you can see with the Heikin-Ashi candles, it was only wicking above. And it wasn't until we had candle bodies closing above that it was truly a move up. So we had a little peak of a candle body, but then it came back down. I told you all last week I was very curious to see what this week's candle would do. Now, the fact that it didn't break up further tells me the move up isn't right now. So if it moved further down, that would not be surprising to me. Now, as far as this move up that happened to the new all-time high at around 109, 110K, it popped out of this channel. You can see lower highs, lower lows, came back down, tested that channel. We can throw on our moving averages and see that Bitcoin, it tested that trend line that I showed you all the way from the bottom. It tested the 50-day moving average, got bought up right away. So that says there's still buyers looking for deals at those prices. And right now it's resting at the 20-day moving average. And you can see on the daily, look how squeezed that candle is between the 1618 at 102K and that 20 average. Now, if this continues down further, possibly see it get back into this channel and possibly even lower, somewhere around the 100-day moving average if the 50 days to not hold. Now, if Bitcoin is to start moving up, you might ask yourself, well, where is the next major fib target? Well, that 2618 is right at about 156K or 155K. I know I didn't draw this absolute perfect, but that's probably a little bit better. It's around 155K. And you'll remember that when we showed the orange boxes, if we get a top somewhere around March, where would 155K be? Right at the lower end of that dark orange box or the higher end of the light orange box. Going further out for your cycle, excuse me, you can see 155K would be in the light orange box over there too. So that fits as far as Bitcoin and a price target to look for. That could possibly be a top. Now, there are other indicators we can look at, such as our logarithmic regression. We talked about this on the rainbow chart, and as you can see, the last two cycles, the log regression got into that red band, and 155K, The 2618 would be up here. So that could be a good price target. It fits a couple different indicators. You can see how the price gets kind of near the middle to top area of the log regression. So that 155K area would not be that shocking to me, which again would be somewhere around here. And even stretched out, maybe closer to 160K, give or take. We'll see where Bitcoin wicks should it continue that upward progress. Now you see these dates down here. These are what is coming up. And this is why I started the video by saying what's more important is to look at the data showing us why something is happening or if it is, rather than trying to predict. Excuse me. So you can see the average amount of time from the bottom to the next peak is around 850 days. I went through all the prior cycles, went from every bottom to the eventual peak, added those days together, divided them, and what we get is 850 days from the absolute cycle bottom to the next peak. That average, you can see that data at the bottom, puts the peak out in March. And I know there's a lot of people calling for a March top. There's also a lot of people calling for 4-year cycles. And what's interesting to me is when you take the average from every halving to the next peak, that's 484 days. And that puts this red line out in August of this year. Now, there's been people calling for a September top. Again, I don't know when the top is. These are different ranges, different ideas, different time scales. What you should be more concerned about is what is the data showing you. Now, if you're looking for answers on alt season and looking for when that happens, there's a couple different indicators to look at. There is total 3. Total 3 is the market cap excluding Bitcoin and ETH. And you can see that last cycle, when Bitcoin got above its prior all-time high, or I'm sorry, total 3, that was when alt season was truly starting. That was about February, and it peaked somewhere around the 2618 to 3618. Eventually, it got there in November, but during this first alt season, the 2618, and that took just about a couple months. We can measure that out here as best as we can, give or take 2-3 months. Bitcoin dominance would show about half of that, but we'll get into that in a second. What has gone on with Total 3 recently? Well, it's gotten rejected by the all-time highs twice, so we haven't gotten above that area yet. And since we haven't gotten above that area yet, we can't be looking for a target around the 1618 or 2618. I wouldn't be looking for as high of a target. You can see last cycle it got all the way to the 3618 line in November, or close to it. So I wouldn't be looking up here. I would be looking more in between the 1618 to 2618 at best. Let's just say 2 trillion for Total 3 as a possible target. It's a nice round number, but we want to see Total 3 breaking up. That has not happened yet. The other indicators we look for alt season is Bitcoin dominance. Now, going over to Bitcoin dominance, when it tanks to the low 40%, the last couple cycles, this is when alt season happened. When the end of the cycle, at least in 2017, was playing out. And you can see this was 4 weekly bars, so about a month. Last cycle, when it started to tank, it took a little bit longer. It took about a month and a half. But again, it's when it broke down here in the middle of March into May. May 10th is really when the alt season started to turn over. And yes, there was that secondary pump in November, okay, but that one was a lot harder to tell what was happening. The last indicator, and I'm going to do something with these here in a minute, the last indicator to really tell when there's alt season, or another one, there's more out there, but the last one I'm going to talk about today is Ethereum Bitcoin. And Ethereum Bitcoin, it's been getting rejected off the 50-week moving average. So until Ethereum Bitcoin gets above the 50-week, I'm not convinced that we have truly bottomed. I was hoping there would be a bottom here around 0.21. We had a 382 fib, but something I also talked about in the last video where we were talking about Ethereum Bitcoin is when we take a fib and we draw from the recent low to high, we can see that it got down to the 786. Actually, yeah, the 786 there. All right. Was that low to high or was it high to low? Sorry, my brain's. Let me let me do this again. Let me just double check my work for you guys. All right. We've gone too far. Let's make sure this is all correct. We have to have our fib on log. Okay. The 0.21, that didn't hold. Good. Maybe my fib was off log and that's what was messing me up. And then we'll go low to high. There we go. That's better. I'm like, something's different this time. It was at the 618. It's at the 618. Apologies. My fib was off log. So I'm looking for Bitcoin or Ethereum Bitcoin to possibly bottom around the 618. This is why it's important to double check your work. You saw me catch an error in real time, and that's okay. It happens to all of us. But when you know something's off, that's why you have to double check your work. All right, here's what I wanted to get into with y'all today. I wanted to take a look at the charts. We're going to take off the moving averages. And let's just take a look at Ethereum Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance over the Bitcoin chart. Because Bitcoin dominance, it's clearly not bottoming yet. And I've looked at this through various RSI indicators with y'all. And you can see that it's still holding up. Even when it starts to break down and become oversold, that can still be a while. So we haven't seen the RSIs breaking down yet. Is there bearish divergence across different RSIs? Yes, there is. But we haven't seen it truly start to break down yet. I've been looking at this on all the RSIs and going over to the monthly. You can see, okay, the monthly started to break down, but by the time it was there last cycle, look at that date. That was March 2020. That was still about a year away from when alt season happened, give or take a month. So could alt season be a year away? If we're just comparing similar levels to last cycle, that's what this is showing us. So have some patience. And again, RSIs, it's not always a one-to-one comparison, but just something to keep in mind. Those things do take time to play out, and we're not there yet. All right, so one thing I wanted to do is take a look at Bitcoin overlaid with Bitcoin dominance, which we looked at in Ethereum Bitcoin. I think y'all are going to like this. I try to bring y'all new stuff each week and talk about different things. So, all right, what do we got here? So this is the 2017 bull run, and you can see that right here. We're going to zoom way in. Now, from the last peak of Bitcoin dominance in 2017, you can see this is where it started to fall, okay? And Bitcoin dominance, it tanked out here in January 13th, but I will tell you, having been in that bull run, the true bottom was January 8th. January 8th, that was doomsday. That's when a bunch of altcoins were selling off drastically. So just right around here, we'll just say June 7th was the time this ended, all right? But where did Bitcoin peak? It peaked at December 17, and we saw Bitcoin dominance top out about 10 days before. You can see that date at the bottom, December 7th. So what is going on here? We see the peak of Bitcoin dominance starting to go down as Bitcoin is finishing its topping move. And I'm going to keep saying this. Until Bitcoin has topped out, we can't expect alt season. That rotation from Bitcoin that we talked about, let's go back to this chart. That rotation from Bitcoin into the other altcoins, that magical alt season time, happens when we get that rotation. The rotation isn't juicy enough to do for large money until it tops out. And Bitcoin, I don't believe has topped out yet. And that's why we haven't seen alt season. And that's why I'm more in the 4-year cycle camp or later this year, maybe early 26, I don't know. But I'm leaning that way because we just haven't seen Bitcoin top yet. We haven't seen this action in Bitcoin dominance. All right, get on with it. You can see how Bitcoin dominance really starts to come down heavily here. We saw the percentages. This was falling off a cliff. Okay, let's go over to 2021. And we're going to take a look at this compared with Ethereum Bitcoin next. So let's go over to 2021. And this is where the other top was. Let's look here at the rainbow chart. This is where alt season was, and the next cycle top. Okay. Yes, there were some alts that pumped higher here, but overall, this is when alt season happened. That's what Bitcoin dominance shows, so on and so forth. Right. Now, this truly ended around May 10th. I showed you that right here. You can even see that reflected in Bitcoin. And oh my God, look at that Bitcoin going from around 60K to 30K, a 50% sell off. All right. So May 10th, right around here, May 9th, that was the end of alt season. Right. And as you can see, Bitcoin dominance hasn't completely bottomed, just like 2017. That happened a week later, but it was close to bottoming. All right. But what do we notice here? From the very peak was all the way back in January. But if you remember just from the Bitcoin dominance chart, and it shows right here in the red line, it flattened out for a while. And when Bitcoin dominance and alt season truly started, it was right here before it fell off of the cliff. That was the end of March. Remember what I said about how the second alt season was about a month and a half? Well, that's about a month and a half from the end of March to May. This here would show us 5 weeks. Can stretch it out to 6 weeks. But what are we seeing? We're seeing Bitcoin dominance bottom out as Bitcoin is finishing its topping pattern. Bitcoin finished its top here in mid-April, but still for another couple weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks, Bitcoin dominance continued to fall off a cliff. We are not seeing that phenomena yet. Let's also take a look at Ethereum Bitcoin, and let's put it against this. So Ethereum Bitcoin, again, we're going back to 2017. What does this show us? Because Ethereum Bitcoin is the shadow of Bitcoin dominance. We want to see Ethereum increase its valuation against Bitcoin. And that hasn't been happening yet. And so if you believe in alt season, you're rooting for Ethereum and those large caps to do well against Bitcoin. But look where Ethereum Bitcoin last bottomed to when it started to move up. Now, you remember what I said, January 8th. That was about when alt season ended right here. So in this time, you'll see Ethereum Bitcoin from that last dip started to move up. At the same time, Bitcoin dominance started to move down, December 7th. Before the top, after the top was made for Bitcoin, there was that massive rotation. That lasted about 2-3 weeks. This is Ethereum Bitcoin. It's almost the exact opposite. Not perfectly, but it's almost the exact opposite of what Bitcoin dominance shows us. And then here, we are in alt season of 21. What are we noticing? We have the end of March right here, where Ethereum Bitcoin is kind of bottomed out. And then once it starts to take off, that's when we get alt season, right up until, remember, May 9th, May 10th. So in this time, you see Bitcoin top out or finishing its topping structure. In 2017, it did top out, but we see this dramatic move that happens for a month. So this is, in conclusion, after saying all this stuff, what can we say definitively about 2017 and 2021? Well, definitively, we saw Bitcoin finishing a topping pattern. Now here the top was closer to the end. We only had 2-3 weeks, right, from mid-April, 2 or 3 weeks till the end, even though alt season started going into it. But we saw a topping pattern, all right? We saw the prices in the log regression. We saw the prices up there in the rainbow chart in these higher bands. Again, I'm looking for the orange bands. We saw the rotation. This is the rotation you're looking for, whether it's Ethereum Bitcoin or Bitcoin dominance, you're looking for that rotation. The last 2 cycles show us that the rotation doesn't happen until Bitcoin is finished topping out or just about to top out. Let me say that again. The rotation does not happen until Bitcoin is topped out or finishing, about to finish topping out. So that is what we are looking for. When that happens, I don't know. No one knows. 2017, it happened quick. 2021, it happened over time. Is it a mix of both? Is it going to be more of one or the other? I don't know. But what's important is this is the data to look for. And whether that happens in April this year, September, November, February of 26, What matters most is this is the data to look out for. And I will be keeping y'all up to date on this throughout that time. If I see this phenomena start to happen, if I see Bitcoin getting into that logarithmic regression band that I showed you earlier, getting to 155K, and I see Bitcoin getting to, because we're talking here about where the top might be. If we see Bitcoin get into those orange bands, the log regression indicator, then red alert, Bitcoin may be in the process of topping out. And then if it starts to top out as it did here in 2017 or 2021, and we see Bitcoin dominance starting to really come down under some of these supports or moving averages, okay, you can see it got rejected or bounced, sorry, off the 50-week moving average. If it starts to really get under these, then we can start talking about, hey, alt season is probably coming very soon. But that simply hasn't happened yet. The good news is this gives us more time to buy. On my channel, I talk about how I use, nothing's financial advice, I use dollar cost average strategy, and I stick to a strict budget. I look at the moving averages and the fibs and certain price points for when to buy, or I also look at confirmation on the MACD, the stochastic buy signals, right? So I talk about and I share two different ways that I really try to buy in different altcoins. So if anything, this leads me to believe the top is later, which also, some of you might think that sucks if that's what's going to happen, but that also gives us more time to accumulate more. And if you've been buying before, that's because I'm willing to bet you believed in alt season. And if you believed in alt season, why would you stop believing in alt season now? That's a question I would pose to you. I've been seeing people say alt season's not going to happen because Wall Street's taking control, the BlackRock, the ETFs, this and that. Yeah, they're taking more control of Bitcoin. But remember, regardless of that, there is more money in Bitcoin than there's ever been before. And even if the rotation is smaller, that smaller rotation is still a bigger alt season than what's ever happened before. Keep that in mind. We can still have a massive alt season. And I'm not saying for all the garbage meme coins on the Solana chain. I'm talking about cryptos, altcoins that are in the top 100, 200, the mining stocks. I still believe that can happen. I hope I'm right. No guarantees. But when I see these reds, I'm looking for deals. I still believe in alt season, and I still think it's a ways away. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Sorry for not putting in this video earlier. As you can tell by my cough, I had no voice the last couple days. So finally, my voice is somewhat back. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree? Disagree? Do you think alt season is done and you're just out of crypto? Hey, it's not for everyone. But having been in the cycle since 2017, 2021, is I believe we are approaching that 150K give or take top. I don't know where, when it's going to happen. This to me is feeling more and more like the last cycle. I remember altcoins weren't running crazy in these times completely. Maybe you were able to get in some that grew slowly over time, did a 5-10x over time, all right? But by the time it got near the top, that's when they exploded. Seriously, that is when these altcoins just took off. And that is the time we're looking for, is alt season. And that rotation hasn't happened yet because Bitcoin probably hasn't topped yet. It may go down, Bitcoin may correct by however much percentage, I don't know. If the top is 155K later in the year, I wouldn't be shocked to see Bitcoin have big corrections into the 70K area, give or take. That's just how crypto works. So thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. Take care.